Welcome to the Denise Hill Experience with stories and interviews that educate, inspire, and encourage. Now, here's your host, Denise Hill.
Welcome to another episode of the Denise Hill Experience. Hello, of course, I am your host, Denise Hill, and I'm here to share with you wonderful times I've had with some wonderful people, perhaps some of your favorite people, maybe an artist, politician, or an everyday person that just has a phenomenal story. I love sharing stories, you know that, right? So this one is one of those stories and experiences I've had with somebody who's so near and dear to my heart, and it's been a challenge for me to do this one. Like, I put it off forever, and the reason why is because while I get to remember some wonderful times that made me laugh and make me warm and fuzzy inside, it also makes me remember some times that were really challenging, and if I think too hard about them right now, would bring me right back to the same tears, because it centers around someone who I miss dearly but made a huge doesn't even actually describe it, a giganormous impact in the music industry, especially centered around gospel and inspirational music. He hails from Brooklyn, New York, and he's known as the godfather of gospel music. I'm talking about none other than the Reverend Timothy Wright. Of course, I've known about him my entire life, or at least my entire life in gospel music, which started at a very young age, singing in a gospel choir that was nationally known and a recording choir at that. So, we found ourselves on several of the same concerts with Reverend Timothy Wright and some other notable people as well. And he taught me some interesting things about business without even directly teaching me about them. Just experiencing him and how he behaved in that particular industry. Man, I learned so much and absorbed so much. I talk about it in my book, Pass the Mic, Stories and Lessons of a Life in Radio. I have an entire chapter dedicated to Reverend Timothy Wright and my experiences with him. Who knew that sometime later, as I would rise in the ranks of gospel radio, I would find myself becoming the very first program director of New York City's only 24-hour gospel station, WLIB. And he was so proud of me, he kind of adopted me as his daughter. And of course, I love to promote his music and talk about any and everything he was doing. I mean, he was New York. Who better to be a part of New York radio than Reverend Timothy Wright? So any chance I got, I needed to be a part of what he was doing and have him be a part of what the radio station was doing. And he obliged. But of course, the story ended way too soon. Because while he had all the accolades of a legend in gospel music, while he had a phenomenal story that included some high-profile people like Reverend Donnie McClurkin, Reverend Al Sharpton, Reverend T.D. Jakes, I'm talking about serious legacy here. While he had all that and more, that still could not stop a drunk driver from driving the wrong way on a highway with their lights off and hitting him head on at 80 miles an hour on the 4th of July, 2008. Man, I remember it like it was yesterday because my family was in town from Washington, D.C., and we were going to see the New York sights and go find a water park in New Jersey and hang out there as well. And while we were getting ready in the hotel room, I got the call, and all the troops rallied together at the radio station, Pastor Donnie McClurkin on the microphone, and had to inform New York City that one of its pillars was clinging to life from a hospital bed, not having known that same car accident claimed the life of his wife and grandson. From that moment on, it was all hands on deck. I mean, we did everything we could do as a community to do concerts, to raise money so he could get the best care, support the family as much as possible, because it wasn't just that they had to be there for Dad, who was recovering from some serious trauma and injuries, but they had to say goodbye and lay to rest the matriarch and a grandson. Man, oh man. But before he went to BAM, the conference that he went to in Detroit that weekend, and was driving back home to New York before the car accident, literally 2 days before he left, he called me up. Niecy? I loved it when he called me that. He said he needed me to interview him now. What you got going on? I just got my book. I need to talk to the people about my book before I leave. Oh, not a problem. I made time very quickly. And that next day he was in the studio recording an interview about his book, Who's Really on the Lord's Side? It's a memoir about his 40 plus years in gospel music. And it's not just about gospel music, but it talks about his life. He was in the military. He got in a knife fight with somebody. I mean, all types of stuff that you wouldn't think the godfather of gospel music would experience was in that book. And he wanted to talk to me about it before he hit the road to go on this concert. Now, at that time, his song, Jesus, 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 was hot. It was smoking up the charts. And I'm like, listen, I want to interview you about that. I'll talk to you about it when I get back. We'll do an interview when I get back. Right now, I gotta talk to you about the book. It was an urgency in his voice. I was so honored to have the only radio interview that he did solely about his book. So this Denise Hill experience, bittersweet for me, but I celebrate his life. I celebrate his legacy. I love, love, love the experiences I had with Reverend Timothy Wright and will cherish them to the very end. They make me smile because he made me smile. I tell you what I know, and I haven't even talked about what his music does for you yet. That was just being in his presence. So I'm so glad I get to share with you a couple of things. I'm going to share with you the interview that we did talking about his book, Who's Really on the Lord's Side? Then I'm going to share with you one of the only, if not the only, recorded interview of one of his very first public appearances and the largest public appearance he made in front of a crowd of more than 2,000 people at the Circle of Sisters conference in New York City, just a few short months after his accident, where he came out in his wheelchair, cast up and all, shared his testimony, and encouraged the saints in true Reverend Timothy Wright fashion. Even talked about the songs he was still writing from his hospital bed. So I'll share both those interviews with you. Don't miss either one. And then I'll tell you about a great celebration that just happened recently in Brooklyn, New York, on the corner where his church still resides and his son pastors. Oh man, so many stories I could share with you about my experience with Reverend Timothy Wright. Oh, I hope you enjoy it. Check it out. And we're here with none other than the legendary Reverend Timothy Wright.
God bless you, Denise. How are you, dear?
Oh, I'm great. The godfather of gospel, the legendary. When folks do all those accolades, how does that make you feel?
Oh, I'm honored. You know, I'm just honored. Sometimes I don't know what to say.
It seems like just yesterday, huh?
Yeah, it does. It does.
But it's been 40 plus years.
43 years.
43 years. And you're kind of commemorating it all with a new book, Who's Really on the Lord's Side? Of course, Who's on the Lord's Side was one of your hottest hits.
Right.
And Who's Really on the Lord's Side is the name of the book. 4 decades of gospel music ministry. It's a biography about your life. Now tell us some of the starting points of this. Is this book solely about your ministry in music, or do we have some personal stories within this?
I have some personal stories in there and some stories about my music ministry, mostly about my music ministry and my family life, and certainly about my time in the Army in the early 60s and my time preaching and ministering at Washington Temple with the late Bishop F.D. Washington.
Wow.
And then Washington Temple holds a special place in my heart because that's where I met my good friend Reverend Al Sharpton, and he did the foreword for the book for me.
Yes.
We're very excited about that as well.
Well, I want to. That Army days kind of piqued my interest. What happened with the Army? Was that prior to your gospel music career?
Well, it was in the midst of the early part of it because I started in like 1959, 1960. I started playing. And when I went into the Army in 1966, I was drafted because that's when the Vietnam War was going on and guys were getting drafted left and right. And so because I played the piano and played the organ for my church, it didn't mean a thing.
That wasn't going to stop it.
It didn't mean nothing.
Wouldn't stop it.
And so I went in, and then during that time, my music made room for me. My gift made room for me. I went and traveled to Arizona. And when I got to Arizona, it was unusual. I was trying to find a piano because wherever I went, if I could find a piano, I could find my bass, you know. And when I was playing the piano, and some young folks was there from a place called Miracle Valley, Arizona, and that was the late Reverend A.A. Allen from Miracle Valley, Arizona, powerful, very, very popular evangelist in that day. And he had a place that was about 17 miles from the Army base, and they hired me.
Wow.
They inspired me, and I began to play out there. And a lot of great preachers came out of the A. Allen ministry. Pastor Shambach came out of there. Don Stewart came out of there. Gene Martin came out of there. These are names that you may not remember because you're too young.
I know a few. I know something.
And then I tell some other unusual stories, things that happened. I tell one story that in 1975, when I was at Washington Temple as minister of music, on the first Sunday in July 1975, I was sitting outside the church about 6 o'clock in the evening. It's about 35, 40 saints hanging around outside. We were getting ready to go inside for First Sunday Communion, and a young man walked up to me. We had dated the same young lady earlier before that time, and this young man had an ought against me, and he walked up to me, and I was sitting there getting ready, meditating on what I was going to play. And he walked up to me and pulled out a switchblade knife and said, "I'm going to kill you." And he started slashing at me, and the saints wouldn't do nothing. They stood there and looked at me. They looked at me, and this young man started slashing at me. And I turned one side. He slashed my shoulder, my sleeve on my jacket. And then somebody said, "Timothy, run, run." And I tried to run. I couldn't run, and I ran and jumped on top of a car, trying to get away from him. And he came over and slashed me on my leg. I got 14 stitches in my leg. And then when he was coming up on the car to try and finish me off, I jumped off the car and ran about a half a block down the street to the Unity Bar and Grill. There was a little Unity Bar and Restaurant right down the street from Washington Temple. And I ran in there. I said, "Hey, y'all, this guy out here chasing me with a knife." They said, "Come on in here, Timothy. We got you, man. We got you." And the Lord let the winos and the wine bibbers and the street folks save my life.
When the church folk would.
Church folks looked at me, wouldn't say a word.
Wow.
And I remember before this incident, I would come to the church every day, and I would see these same guys sitting around outside the church, and I would speak to them. Didn't know them, but I would speak to them. "Hey, man, how you doing? Good morning." I'd give them 50 cents, give them $1. But little did I know they would be the ones that would actually save my life.
Wow.
And several years later, this same young man that attacked me, he died. He passed away. And Bishop Washington was out of town, and I had to preach his funeral.
Wow. Wow.
So that's one of the stories that's in the book. And so many other things happened. A lot of people, memorable people, we've crossed paths. Our lives have crossed paths, and it's just a good read. Get it. If you really want to know something about the history of gospel music from 1965 on up to now, get this book, and it'll tell you a lot about it.
Got to, have to, must have this book, because a lot of folks they stay completely separate from the gathering of the music, the formation of it, the inspiration behind it, and they just kind of pick up at I got my favorite song from the store point, and it's a disconnect from.
There's a story behind the ministry.
Oh yeah. How do you prepare yourself to go back 40 years and remember?
I got a real good memory. I don't know how. I can remember things that happened 50 years ago.
Wow.
I'll be 61 in June. But I can remember things that happened when I was 6, 7, 8 years old. I remember the first time I met Mahalia Jackson. I met Mahalia Jackson in 1971 over in Trinidad. And she was there doing a concert tour, and Bishop Washington was over there doing a revival. And she came down to Skinner Stadium in a place called Down South, called San Fernando in Trinidad. And she did a concert at Skinner Park, and I played the organ for her that night.
Wow.
Yeah, Mahalia Jackson, 1971.
Wonderful, wonderful. How, I don't even know how to ask this, to sit back decade after decade and folks who we call legends now go home to be with the Lord.
Yeah.
How does one deal with that, and how does one put that in perspective when they have to continue forth and kind of bear the burden of remaining the legacy?
Denise, I feel blessed because I'm still here.
Yeah.
A lot of my contemporaries are gone. I tell a story about when I was doing the Gospel Fest in Chicago in 1993, I believe it was, and we were getting ready to go on stage, and the act before us was the late Thomas Whitfield. and he sang, and his choir sang, and his group sang. And then when he came off stage, he came and grabbed me and hugged me and invited me to his wedding, which was just about 30 days away, maybe 2 months away. And I said, yeah, man, I'm gonna try my best to come to your wedding, man. And we hugged and embraced, and then we went on to perform. And then, as everybody knows, not long after that, he passed away and went home to be with the Lord. So these are some stories that I remember, and people that I remember. The late Reverend Cleveland. Yeah. I remember I did the concert at his church about a year before he died. And the Lord blessed us out there. And Reverend Cleveland is the one who's really responsible for me staying in New York and pastoring. Really? I was getting ready to take a church up in Connecticut. I had gotten a call to go to a church in New London, Connecticut. And I told Reverend Cleveland about it. He said, you don't need to go to no Connecticut. When you go Connecticut, can't nobody find you up there. That's him. He said, your blessings in Brooklyn. That's what he said, right? And so I said, Reverend, are you sure? He said, yeah, your blessings in Brooklyn. And so, I stayed in Brooklyn. All right. I went and found me a building, and I started my church in Brooklyn and been there for 18 years. Love it. And the Lord has blessed us, And so Reverend Cleveland was a great influence on my life. I thank God for him. He was a great influence on my life, and so many other pastors and preachers. I got a story in there about Bishop T.D. Jakes. Mm-hmm. I was supposed to go to him in 1984. He was a struggling preacher down in Charleston, West Virginia. Right. And he had called me and wanted to come, and I was all scheduled to go, and I got tied up somewhere with Bishop Washington somewhere, and I couldn't make it. And so I called him and said, Doc, I can't make it. And he was and I could hear the dejection in his voice when I told him I couldn't make it. But Douglas Miller filled in for me. And so every now and then when I see Bishop Jakes now, I remember, because he done blown up. Right. I could kick myself for not going. And he laughs at me. He's forgiven me, but we all the time smile about it and remember. Yeah. There's some great stories in there about a lot of things that I've seen. And
oh, you got to grab the new book. It's called Who's Really on the Lord's Side? Yes, 4 decades of gospel music ministry by the godfather of gospel himself, Reverend Timothy Wright. The foreword is by Reverend Al Sharpton. I talked with Reverend Sharpton just a few days ago. He said he started preaching at 4. Do you recall?
When I got to Washington Temple in 1969, he was a 15-year-old boy preacher, and he was leading the youth department. Yeah. And at the age of 15 years old, Al Sharpton could preach like a 40-year-old man. Yeah. At 15. Wow. He was awesome even at that age. So we knew there was something special about him even then. So I think we've maintained a close relationship over the years. Yeah. And I certainly thank God for him. And I tell folks all the time, they say, well, you don't need Al Sharpton. I tell you, there's 3 people. If you get in trouble, there's 3 people you need to call. First of all, you need to call Jesus. Of course. Then if you're married, you need to call your wife. That's it. Then your next call should be Al Sharpton.
That's it.
In that order.
Well, Pastor, I appreciate you so much for all that you do for gospel music, for keeping everybody inspired and encouraged, and for just being who you are, I appreciate you for that.
I thank you for your support, and God bless you and your ministry, because my ministry wouldn't be possible without your ministry.
Well, I appreciate it. And you've taught me some things we're going to talk about off the air. Okay. You taught me some things without even knowing you were teaching. I've been watching you for some years. Back when I was with Youth for Christ Fellowship Mass Choir in D.C.
Okay. All right.
Watching you.
All right.
But you all can get an inside look. Get the book, Who's Really on the Lord's Side? 4 decades of gospel music ministry. Reverend Timothy Wright. Thank you, Pastor. What an honor to have probably the only radio interview that he did about his memoir, his book, Who's Really on the Lord's Side. That next day, he hit the road to Detroit for a conference. A couple of days later, 4th of July, 2008, he drove back and found himself in a car accident that would leave him paralyzed and claim the life of his wife and his grandson. But a few months later, you're not going to keep Reverend Timothy Wright down. With the assistance of his son Danny, he took the stage of the Circle of Sisters Expo, shared his testimony, and encouraged the saints. Check it out.
Praise the Lord. I want to thank you. I thank God for all He's done for me. I've been through a lot. On Friday night, 4th of July, I left Detroit with my wife and my grandson coming home. I was on Interstate 80, and little did I know there was a drunk driver going the wrong way with the lights out, and we collided head on at 80 miles an hour. Killed Sister Wright instantly, and my grandson, he died as well. They were wearing their seatbelts. I was the only one that didn't have on a seatbelt, but I had a different seatbelt. My left leg was broken in 3 places. My right ankle was shattered. My spine was bruised. They put several plates in my jaw, but I'm still here. I come to let somebody know, stop complaining. Stop complaining. Because if you have your life, health, and strength, the activities of your limbs, you got a reason to give God praise. I thank God for all the saints all around the country who have been so supportive with their prayers and support. But I really thank God for the saints right here in New York City. Pastor Bishop Hezekiah Walker and Pastor McClurkin and Sister Denise and everybody, all that you've done. Thank God for my sons and my family, and I'm going to make it. I'm going to make it. Devil should have killed me while he had a chance. Now that I see how far I've come, I'm grabbing another hold and I'm going to make it. Lord gave me a song the other night in the hospital room. I ain't going to sing it today. But he left me here. He left me here for a reason. You need to go tell at least 3 people, I'm still here for a reason. I'm still here for a reason. Keep me in your prayers. I'm paralyzed from my chest down, but when Pastor McClurkin was singing and Pastor Hezekiah was singing, I felt a tingling in my legs. I felt a tingling in my legs. Next time you see me, I'm going to be walking. God bless you.
And on that great getting up morning when we see all of our ancestors, we gonna see him walking. My God, my God. Let me tell you, that's just made me super happy. I do miss him dearly. But just celebrating his legacy, which still holds today. I guess that's the mark of a legacy though, right? That just makes me happy. That makes me happy. So much so that recently I made my way to Brooklyn, New York, because guess what happened? They named the corner where his church is after him. Yes, they did. There was an entire street renaming ceremony, the Reverend Timothy Wright Way. How many people can say they have a street named after him? Let me tell you, he earned that one. And much love to the family of New Grace Tabernacle, because they put in some work to make sure that that legacy was preserved and that name was front and center in the history of Brooklyn, of New York, of the nation, of gospel music, and so much more. Much love to his sons, and especially to Pastor David Wright. David assumed the mantle of Reverend Timothy Wright's church soon after his passing, and he has continued to protect his father's legacy as well as grow it, even producing new music with his choirs, New York Fellowship, and more. Man, oh man, Reverend Timothy Wright. His legacy lives on, and I'm so happy and honored to have had some experiences with him. Wish I had time to share them all with you. I don't. But I've got so many more experiences to share with you. So make sure you subscribe to this page so that you don't miss one, okay? Also, you can follow me on social media. I'm at The Denise Hill on all platforms. I've had so much fun hanging out with you. You're part of the experience as well. Can't wait to have more with you. Until next time, you stay blessed.
Thank you for joining the Denise Hill Experience. For more, connect with Denise at denisehill.com and on all social media at The Denise Hill. See you next time for more great stories and interviews inside the Denise Hill Experience.